many people think that, the creation position closes down good science. But actually, the creation position, contrary to what people think, opens up science. If anything, the evolutionist is the one who is believing in his magic wand and saying, as I said earlier, reptiles changed into birds, but not telling me how. It's an evolution of the gaps. He doesn't know the answer, but he just waves his magic wand of evolution and he says evolution did it. So the creation position is actually by far the most defensible position scientifically. Evolution is not defensible scientifically. It doesn't actually work in practice. And contrary to what people think, it's the creation position that actually unlocks new areas of thought and new areas of science. The best illustration is for this is the DNA issue. For many years, people thought, and in fact many decades, people thought that all the junk DNA, that is the DNA which was not obviously encoding for any information, they said, well, that is junk. It's not doing anything. That's come as part of the vestigial stuff which no longer is any use, but has come as a result of all the mutations and stuff going on in our DNA. But in 2012, we actually were able, not that we, I meant people were able to actually work out that there was a genome for the human beings. The Human Genome Project pieced together the DNA, which is what we call functioning DNA, which codes for information in the human body. But then, lo and behold, people realized that some of the DNA which they previously had thought was junk was not junk. In 2012, the Human Genome Project realized that the DNA which previously had been thought to be junk was no longer junk. And further work has been found that actually shows that junk DNA really is doing something useful. And the gentleman who did the work is a Greek scientist who is working in America, and his name is Dr. John Stamatoyiannopoulos. And in the journal Science, in December 2013, he stated this: for over 40 years, we have assumed that DNA changes affecting the genetic code solely impact how proteins are made. So basically that the coding part of the DNA, he was saying, is the only bit which really was doing anything useful. Then he said this very important point. Now we know that this basic assumption about reading the human genome missed half the picture. Many DNA changes that appear to alter protein sequences may actually cause disease by disrupting gene control programs or even both mechanisms simultaneously. So he's actually making the point that the other bit of DNA previously called junk actually has switches and mechanisms in it for actually controlling the way the functioning or the coding part of the DNA is doing its work. So there are further levels of complexity in the DNA, which goes back to our earlier point that there is irreducible complexity within the DNA itself, which is saying that not only have you got coding parts of the DNA, you've got switches in the non-coding part of the DNA, and even in the coding part of the DNA, they found that you can read the message going in the other direction and get a different message in the same part of the DNA. It's a bit like a crossword puzzle where you've got overlapping words. All this has been found in more recent years. So everything is saying that the DNA is something which has got sophisticated systems in it. And when people were trying to make out that the non-coding part was junk, people from the creation community were saying, no, this is not junk. We still need to do more work to find out what's going on. So we made a prediction that it was not junk. What happens years later? They find out that it's not junk. Who was right then? The people who were saying that it was junk, or the people who were saying that it wasn't junk? The person who notably said that it wasn't junk was a person called Jonathan Wells from the Discovery Institute, and he's been proved absolutely right.